Welcome to Rainy Day Rabbit Holes,
a uniquely Pacific Northwest podcast.
I'm Shay.
And I'm Jody.
And on each episode, we take you on a journey through the weird, wacky, and wonderful stories of Pacific Northwest history.
So put on your North Face. Absolutely do not open an umbrella. Pour yourself a cup of Northwest roasted coffee and
let's fall down the rabbit hole. I like that little spicy ad you gave there. If you open an umbrella in the Seattle area, you're a tourist.
Yes. I mean, I used one all day yesterday. It was a soccer game.
Look,
you got to use when you're standing there in the pouring rain at a football game.
Or when you're dressed up nice to go somewhere. You're not going to wear a rain jacket. You're going to put on an umbrella. It's fine. Look, I'm just going to start this episode with the title of an article I found in the Seattle Star.
The Seattle Star.
Paul Bunyan does it high with pigeons in the sky.
Does what?
Just let that sink in.
And how high? High on what? Does what? And how high on what?
Where's your mind going?
Keep going.
Get it out of the gutter, you pervert.
No.
The story isn't about Enumclaw. It's tangentially about Tacoma.
Oh, okay.
And surrounds.
Surround town.
This story is the weirdest, wildest story we have brought you yet on Rainy Day Rabbit Holes. It has so many twists and turns, it will make your head spin. Unbutton your pants.
Done.
Because this one is a meaty boy.
Oh, am I going to get the meat sweats?
Yes. Arby's. We've got the meat sweats. All right. Are you ready, Jody?
Yes, I'm so ready. You've been talking about this. Hopefully, Shay, though, that you didn't talk it up too much.
You can't possibly be ready for this story.
Okay.
All right. Let's go.
All right.
First, I have to thank Chris over at Pretty Gritty Tours. His YouTube video on this topic, which I will link in the show notes, supplied so much information. Then I also have to glare at Chris at Pretty Gritty Tours.
Glare at.
Because the twist he added sent me down a bottomless rabbit hole and made me lose hours and days of my life. I also need to thank Brian Shickley, artist, filmmaker, animator, and all-around nice guy, who spent 2.5 hours on the phone with me yesterday talking about this story. He gave me so much information and was just kind of an entertaining hang. Like, we had a blast just talking. It was like hanging out. He's asked, invite me on some of your adventures.
Oh, he wants to road trip with us.
Yes, because he loves, he's like, oh yeah, every time I would bring something, he's like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so put a pin in that name because he's going to come back multiple times.
Say it again.
Brian Shickley. So it's Brian with a Y, Bryan. Shickley is Shikley.
Okay, it's in stone now.
Brian Shickley. Okay. We're going to bring him back. All right. And one more thing. This coming Saturday, May 25th, we are going to be guests on the Grit City podcast. So you need to go follow them on Spotify so you can hear that episode. And we will definitely link to it in our show notes and on Facebook. And we are going to be talking about some very cool Tacoma history. Right?
I'm excited.
And it's going to be fun. Yeah, it's going to be a fun hang. All right, here we go. Nestled in the dark, cold waters of Puget Sound, just north of the tip of Tacoma, lies a small, sleepy island with rugged shores kissed by the salty breeze and blanketed by dense foliage. This little island is connected to the larger Vashon Island by a man-made isthmus, and nothing much happens there these days. There's some farms, lots of hippies, and a robust anti-vax community. Measles is made up by the government to control you. The lizard people created COVID. Oh, wait, that one I just made up.
Oh, my goodness.
You get the picture.
Yes, I've been here.
And they are also rich, mostly, but there are still people that have lived there for years.
Is this Maury Island?
I'll get to that. Keep your pants on. I know I told you to unbutton them, but I did not tell you to take them all the way off.
I mean, I've been there with my boat. It's the only reason I know.
Also nestled amongst the lush greenery is a company that I bet you've never heard of. It's known as the Bone Factory.
No.
It's called Sawbones. They produce the bulk of North America's model bones, mostly for medical professionals to practice on.
Interesting.
Yeah. They make fake bones on Vashon Island and they send them off for people to do medical students to do training on.
So do they make it out of something similar to
It's something that ends up
bone?
having this similar consistency. So that
Okay.
way, when you're like sinking a screw into a bone, you can get the same sort of feel, or you're cutting into a bone, you can get the same sort of feel. So that way that doctors in training can practice on these things. So it's not just like the skeleton that was hanging in your anatomy class.
Right.
Which sometimes, which used to be real bones.
Right.
Oh. No, these are for like, we're going to make you a bone that is so close to bone that you can barely tell the difference, so that when you are training to be a doctor that has to do stuff with bone, that you can train on this fake bone.
Nice.
It's very cool. Okay. But that's
Is it the only place?
I have no idea, because that is not what the story is about.
Too far.
The story is thousands of degrees weirder.
Wrong tunnel in the rabbit hole.
Yes. The tiny community of Maury Island isn't really much to base a podcast episode on. Unless, of course, you want to hear about how this sleepy area of the Puget Sound was the setting for a mind-boggling mystery and the origin of a pop culture phenomenon. You're raising your eyebrows at me. You know this story, but you don't know this story.
I'm even picturing the people in the story with the dreadlocks and the hippie look.
Dreadlocks.
Yeah. So I've heard
there's no dreadlocks in this story.
So so what I'm thinking of is probably about 10 years ago, I was reading about this community that was very like that, just dressed as hippies, wearing this pullover like I'm wearing now.
That they paid like $80 for.
Yes, but I paid $13 in Mexico.
Nice job.
And then dreadlocks, and just very hippie-ish.
Oh, but white dreadlocks.
White dreadlocks. Yes. Appropriation appropriate.
Appropriation appropriate. Okay, well, that is not at all the community that we are talking about today.
So I'm already picturing something similar but different.
The year is 1947.
Oh, way back.
Yeah, no dreadlocks.
Before.
By the way, 1947 is the year that the U.S. Supreme Court says that women are equally qualified with men to serve on juries.
Wow, we made it.
We made it.
Came a long way, baby.
And on June 24th, amateur pilot and fire extinguisher salesman Kenneth Arnold, on his way from Chehalis, Washington to Yakima, was enjoying the clear day with just a little breeze. It was just before 3 p.m., and the weather couldn't have been prettier. A perfect Pacific Northwest day. He just had decided to see if he could spot a downed Marine Corps. Is it corpse? Is that just Corps?
Just Corps.
Why is it spelled corpse?
Corporation. I don't know.
Why is it spelled corpse?
Well, it's
but you
short
have to
for
say
something.
Corps.
Marine Corps. But it's
spelled corpse.
It's short for something. I'm going to look it up while you keep talking.
Okay. Marine Corpse, as in the dead Marine.
No, that's an E on the end.
Also, why is it indictment when it's spelled indictment?
English.
It doesn't say corps, it says corpse.
It does.
You're just missing an E, but there's a P in there. Why is the P silent?
Here's what I found.
Is it clear as mud?
Corps is a term used to describe a group, especially an organized group of people such as soldiers. And it comes from the French word corps, meaning body. Corpse.
Oh, it is corpse.
It is corpse, but we don't say that.
So you know what?
You're going to say it.
I'm going to start something right now.
I'm
going to say Marine Corpse.
Okay.
So if anybody comes at me with I pronounced it wrong, I am doing that on purpose because it is spelled corpse and it means corpse. Thank you.
Shay ruins everything.
No, I'm correcting everything. I'm making things better. Everybody else is wrong. Okay. All right. So anyway, Kenneth Arnold.
More champagne.
Let's go back to Kenneth Arnold is cruising around in his little plane. He's in a Cal Air A2, and he is looking while he's traveling from point A to point B for a downed Marine Corps plane that had disappeared in January because there was a $5,000 reward for this, which 1947, that's a lot of money.
That is.
Yeah. As he was cruising over Mineral, Washington, near Mount Rainier in his little Cal Air A2, as we had said, he spotted something extraordinarily strange. Off to his left, about 20 to 25 miles north of him, 9 shiny objects shot across the clear afternoon sky at about the same altitude as him. He blinked and squinted his eyes. Maybe it's just the sun reflecting off his fuselage. He rolled down a window, and the bright objects could still be seen. The objects were roughly circular, flat like a pie pan, as Arnold later described, except for one that was crescent-shaped and so shiny that they reflected the sun like a mirror. At first, he thought they were geese, but quickly realized that the objects were way too big as the DC-4 airplane that was about 20 miles away. He radioed over to the DC-4, but they didn't see anything. He thought about jet planes. Maybe this is a military aircraft test.
Formation.
No, it can't be. He timed them at 1 minute 42 seconds for the 47 miles from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams. They have to be going at least 1,200 miles per hour. And their movement is just all wrong for a jet job, which sounds like a really fast blow job. But I'm just a pervert.
Maybe we'll have to put that as a menu item for our bathrooms.
Jet job.
We'll have it airplane theme.
I guess I don't know what they were, unless they were guided missiles, Arnold told an East Oregonian editor when he stopped to refuel in Pendleton, Oregon. The crescent-shaped objects twisted in the sun, almost like a fish flopping in the light. They almost appeared to be threading their way through the mountains, flying in an undulating formation, like a saucer would if you skipped it across water. The reporter mistakenly reported the incident as having involved flying saucers. And this, my friends, is supposedly the origin of the term flying saucers.
Oh.
Although
right here in the Northwest.
He did not say that they looked like flying saucers. He just said they moved like a saucer skipping across water. He said they were crescent shaped. So keep that in mind.
Oh, okay. Crescent shaped, so like a boomerang.
Yeah. Yeah, and he later on went to do an artist rendering of what he saw, and it looked like a silver boomerang. And right in the middle, and I'll post this on our show notes. Right in the middle is this little round, it almost looks like a knob of a decorative knob of a drawer. Or a lady's brooch, like a round something with filigree on it. Like it looked like he took a boomerang that was metal and stuck a doorknob or a lady's brooch on it. It was weird. I was like, okay, buddy, you do you. An Army spokesman from Washington, D.C. commented, as far as we know, nothing flies that fast except a V-2 rocket, which travels at about 3,500 miles per hour. Much too fast to be seen. He also added that V-2 rockets would not look like the objects that Arnold had reported, and that there were no high-speed experimental tests in the area that day. But would they actually tell the public if there were?
And wouldn't they explode at the end or something? If they were,
I mean, if you saw them when they were zooming across, you don't know how far their target is. Yeah. And I did just listen to a podcast about the V-2 rocket when the Nazis were developing the V-2 rocket, and they were notoriously like bad.
Oh,
like they would go up and then just like curve around and then flop down. They
never
actually made the V-2 rocket actually work. It was actually one of the things that kind of was a big detriment to the Nazi regime, because they put a lot of money and a lot of effort into developing the V-2 rocket, and it just went nowhere.
Makes it a possibility then.
Yeah.
But it was going nowhere.
Right.
Could have been these saucers. No.
A few days later, an Army rocket expert from the White Sands Proving Ground ventured the opinion that Arnold's flying saucers were merely jet planes. Arnold's report of the strange occurrence gripped the nation. Within days, there were multiple sightings reported around the state and then around the country. Mrs. F.S. Chamberlain, who is not allowed to have her own first name because, she's a woman.
That's the goal of many alpha males.
It's to just take on a man's name.
Yes, it's my goal in life.
I did it. And I love how that they always put the address of the person in the newspaper at that time. Why?
The old-timey newspapers are crazy. So you can go
visit them and talk to them?
Yes.
Or is it, I think it's probably maybe judgy about where they live.
Right. Phone numbers are in there. I mean, it's just, they talk about who hangs out with who. I mean, it is just.
Well, here's her address. 1563, is it Southwest Washington Avenue in Corvallis?
Yes.
She
college town.
reported that the same day Arnold had seen his 9 flying saucers, she had seen hundreds of bright, shiny objects in the sky. Although she poo-pooed the idea that they were anything mysterious because she thought they were birds at first, but she reported that there were bunches of them, and as fast as one bunch would disappear, another one would come into sight. She said that they were triangular shaped and so bright that when she looked away, she would have bright dots in her vision.
Wow.
So I was just looking for stuff in the newspapers. These were all from the newspaper at the time.
Oh, wow.
So meanwhile, in Woodland, Washington, a farmer reported that the quote unquote skimming pie plates were over his farm a few days later and that his foreman saw it too.
And that's like northeast
I have no
of
idea where
Corvallis.
Woodland is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I will trust you because I don't know.
Been there.
More and more reports came in from Bremerton, Portland, and Vancouver, Washington, as well as Boise. The first so-called pictures of an alleged UFO were published in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer on July 5th, 1947, of a small bright disk flying over Lake City, which is just north of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
But Eugene Mann E.H. Sprinkle produced a photo of 7 dots in the sky, which he claimed were UFOs that flew over on June 18th. They were later shown to just be spots of dust on the negative, or sprinkles, if you will.
Fun.
Sprinkles of dust, because it was E.H. Sprinkles. Do you get my joke?
Gah, ha, ha. Oh, yeah.
Thank
I already
you.
forgot
Thank
about
you.
his name. I
Sorry.
was so into the story and the detail.
Sprinkles. Sprinkles.
Oh, gosh. What an unfortunate name.
It's not that bad. We've had come across a
That's
lot worse
for
names.
sure.
Sprinkles is fine. They just start a cupcake company.
Remind me to tell you about one I saw the other day.
No, the best was Richard Head that owns a property in Mercer Island, Washington.
Yeah.
Richard Head.
It's like, is this real life?
That's why.
So
So
am I reading this right? This cannot be right. This is somebody did this as a joke.
Right. These are just some of the 800 plus reports of sightings after Kenneth Arnold's initial sighting in late June of 1947. Arnold became something of a local and national celebrity at the time, with newspapers all over the country reaching out to him. He does eventually write a book a few years later, which I'm eventually going to read, but 1950s book.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there were...
Is it on tape?
I know,
Can
is it
you
on
audible
Audible? There were a few corroborating stories. On July 4th, the Portland, Oregon Journal received a letter from a man who claimed to have seen 3 strange objects over Richland about an hour and a half before Arnold.
Wow. That's not close together.
I mean, that's in the Tri-Cities.
Yeah.
Tri-Cities.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Chris. He said they were traveling faster than a P-38, which that top speed was about 440 miles per hour. The day before, this man also told his local newspaper, "I believe it may have been a visitor from another planet."
Martian.
In Yakima, Ethel Wheelhouse also reported several flying discs moving at a fantastic speed the same time as Arnold. And Ethel doesn't lie. I mean, she may have a homely face, but she makes an excellent Jell-O salad. And, Ethel just couldn't tell a lie. My stars. Can you believe it? Sorry, that's what Ethel does to me.
Oh, okay. I was like...
No, that wasn't in the paper, but the name Ethel just makes me...
Oh, I was like, Ethel, maybe one of my next grandkids will be...
No, do not bring back Ethel. It's not a good name. Sorry to all the Ethels out there. There's probably not an Ethel out there that listens
not
to the
anymore.
show. Once military intelligence began investigating, they found another witness. Forest Service Ranger in Diamond Gap said he saw flashes at 3 p.m. over Mount Rainier, which is about the same time that Kenneth Arnold saw his things. And they appeared to move in a straight line. And another man also corroborated this account. A few days later, on July 4th, a United Airlines pilot reported spotting 5 to 9 disc-like objects that paced the plane for 10 to 15 minutes, then suddenly disappeared. So Kenneth Arnold quickly raised the topic of possible extraterrestrial origins.
Yeah.
Here's what he said. "The discs are not from any foreign country. The Army could give the answer if it would. If they don't have the explanation now, they certainly could do something to find out. If the Army has no explanation, the discs must be, and I know this sounds crazy, from another planet.
Absolutely. It's the only answer.
Right, only answer. Lieutenant Frank Brown and Captain William Davidson from Hamilton Field in California interviewed Arnold on July 12th. The investigators wrote, "It is the present opinion of the interviewer that Mr. Arnold actually saw what he says he saw. It is difficult to believe that a man of his character and apparent integrity would state that he saw objects and write up a report to the extent that he did if he did not see them."
So he's not known around town as somebody who's
He's a
just
charlatan.
storytelling. Yeah.
Oh, he's a fire extinguishing salesman. He's an upstanding citizen.
He's straight as they come.
Right. He's boring as could be. Wears khaki pants. But others in the Army Air Corps didn't believe the story. They dismissed his report as a case of silly season episodes. Do we know what silly season episodes mean? Is there a silly season?
I'm going to look it up while you keep talking. 'Cause
Is silly
that's weird.
season June? Is summer silly season? I would say summer could be silly season. That's when you get up to shenanigans because it's nice out.
Absolutely. That's my silly season.
Silly season episode.
Okay, so silly season in the United Kingdom, silly season is a period in the summer months known for frivolous news stories and the mass media.
Oh, that is perfect. So maybe it was in the 1940s, more used over here. Okay, so that's what silly season episodes. The Army finally publicly concluded that the objects of this sighting were due to a mirage.
The same mirage in all these places?
Well, there's explanations,
Gotcha.
which we will get to.
Hold tight
We're
for you.
almost there. However, the intelligence division of the Army Air Force was still secretly investigating all of the sightings and compiled the most reliable witness sightings, like the pilots and Arnold. This eventually led to the creation of Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book.
Oh, I was hoping it was E.T.
But I also want to remind the listeners that just 75 air miles away from the region that Arnold claims to have seen these objects is the McChord Army Airfield, which is now part of Joint Base Lewis McChord.
Right.
And 600 miles away is March Field in California. At that time, which when you're talking about high-speed jets, that's not far. March Field had Lockheed P-80s, a jet fighter that had a max speed of 594 miles per hour. Army officials reported that on the same day Arnold had his sighting, 24 P-80 fighters and 2 bombers were flying over the Pacific Northwest about the same time the discs were reported. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Other skeptical explanations were mirages of several snow-capped peaks in the Cascade Mountain Range. One skeptic claimed that if Arnold stated that they were traveling at the same speed as his plane, that they were in fact stationary. Don't know why, because I don't understand physics.
Yeah, I was just, that bent my brain.
Yeah, that's
Bent my
some
brain.
math. You got to do some math for that. I'm not good at that. Mirages could have been caused by temperature inversions because of the valleys and peaks.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
It also might have just been misidentified pelicans. So they're
Shiny pelicans.
yeah, their underside can reflect light, and they also have a tendency sometimes to fly at really high altitudes. And when they're flying, they have a crescent shape.
Okay. They go that high, huh?
Well, here's the other thing: is judging things when you're in the air
Sure.
with your own eyeballs.
Sure. Scientific tools.
Other explanations: clouds of snow blown off the mountains. And this is a word that I do not understand, which I did not look up. Orographic clouds.
Orographic clouds are clouds that develop in response to the forced lifting of air by the Earth's topography.
That
The
is
mountains, for
clear
example.
as
So it's
mud.
not riding at all.
Okay.
Air passing over the mountain oscillates up and down as it moves downstream.
Oscillating. He did mention oscillating. Or, I like this one, maybe just spots of water on his airplane window.
Oh my gosh. Needs better wipers.
Right? But Arnold's report of mysterious flying objects wasn't the first strange incident to be reported in the Pacific Northwest. This was just the tip of the iceberg of this bizarre tale,
Dun, dun, dun.
which we will dive into after the break. The fact that you are listening to this podcast tells me that you are a podcast lover. But you know what sucks about podcasts? They're hard to work out too. If you're like me and you need a beat, then we have found your solution.
You need to get yourself the Podbeat app. This free mobile app lets you easily add a beat to any podcast or audiobook for a run, a hike, or a workout.
It's easy and kind of genius. You open the app, select your desired beat. They've got everything from pop to rock to EDM and more. Select the BPM or beats per minute that you want, adjust the volume, and then hit the lock button. Then you open up your podcast and hit play.
Here's an example. Here's me talking without a beat. I know you love the sound of my voice, but you can't really run to it. And here's me talking using the Podbeat app to add beat under my voice. Pretty cool, huh?
Now you have no excuse to not listen to our podcast. You can listen while you do anything.
Head on over to the Apple App Store or Google Play to get the Podbeat app now.
We will also link it in the show notes and on our social media. Back to the show. On June 21st, 1947, just 3 days before Arnold's sighting in the sky, Harold Dahl was out on his boat with his son Christopher, his dog, who apparently was named Sparky, and 2 employees. Harold had a contract to recover logs that had floated away from log jams that were on their way to be turned into paper at the nearby paper mills.
Where are they?
This is in the Puget Sound between Vashon and Tacoma.
In that area. Okay.
Yes.
In our Maury Island area.
Exactly.
Okay.
FYI, that's one of the sources of the famous Tacoma aroma. The other sources of the famous Tacoma aroma: a rendering plant, an oil refinery, and for several memorable weeks in the summer of 1997, a newly unsealed sewage tank that the city opened after 15 years of fermenting.
Oh my goodness. How did I not hear about this?
We're going to do a whole episode on the Tacoma aroma. I think it deserves its own
we are.
episode.
Yes. I mean, it's in our trailer. We owe people. We owe the people. We owe the fans.
So Harold Dahl, who was a simple man, and possibly a weapons dealer, was cruising the Puget Sound just off the shores of Little Maury Island about 2 p.m. when suddenly 6 shiny donut-shaped objects appeared in the sky above, floating about 2,000 feet above the ship. He said that they were about 100 feet in diameter, with holes in the center, portholes all around the edge, and were made of a reflective metal. As they watched, one of the objects started to slowly descend over the boat. Boom! There's an explosion, and molten slag begins to rain over the boat and the water.
Oh my.
The boat is damaged. Dahl's son Charles is burned, and poor Sparky is killed. RSVP, poor Sparky.
No, not RSVP. RIP.
Oh, sorry.
Quite the opposite, actually. Unless he's RSVPing
To his own death.
I actually won't be there because I'm RIPing.
What if you get a wedding invitation you don't want to get to go to and you just respond to RIP, I can't be there because I'll be dead?
From now on. That is how I will.
That's the real tragedy here. It's the
I
death
agree.
of the dog. Can we
I
focus
agree.
more on that? Anyway, they freak out and they run the boat ashore on the beach of Maury Island. They jump off and they hide beneath some cliffs until the rain of molten metal stops and the saucers fly away. Now, in this story...
Wait, so when they heard the explosion of the molten stuff, did one of them happen to disappear?
No, so one of these ships was struggling.
Okay.
And then it was kind of over the boat when all this molten metal started coming out of the center of the ship. So
Okay.
it's raining down on the boat. So and it kills the dog, it hurts the son. So they're under a molten rain of metal.
right.
So they run the boat up on the beach and they jump off and they go hide in the cliffs. And then the ships all go away.
Okay, but none of them fell.
None of them fell out of the sky.
From
Yeah,
the
that one
whatever
just
disaster
they
created
disappeared.
that.
That's
Okay.
all we hear is they disappeared.
You've heard of airplanes dumping their fuel or the toilets as they're getting ready to land. Do you think that's
Alien toilet.
That's what I pictured.
Everybody's getting excited over this metal material and it's just alien frozen poop.
Yeah. Molten alien
Great. That'd be great.
turds.
It's alien turds.
That's what I'm picturing.
Now, Dahl claims that he had the wherewithal to pull out a camera and take several pictures of the saucers. Which is
On his iPhone?
It's the most right? It's the most sketchy part of the whole story.
Right. It's 1947, you say?
Right. And he's out on a troller boat doing a job looking for logs, and you just carry your camera like close by.
I'm always wondering, like, what's the shutter time on those things? Like, is he...
Well, I mean, I've had an old
Longer's
camera.
better, right? As long as you're not moving?
Well, yeah, you wouldn't want long exposure on that. It's a bright day, so you don't want long exposure.
Oh, where's the daytime? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like in the middle of the day. It's like 2 p.m. or whatever. Anyway.
It was scarier in my mind at night.
Right.
Dang it.
After the molten slag stops raining down, the men are able to get the boat back on the water. At this time, they decide that poor Sparky needs a burial at sea, and so they drop his little body overboard to sink into the murky waters of the Puget Sound.
I mean, he was a sea dog, I guess. That's what you do.
You know, man, it sure would have been a shame to come back to the dock with some sort of evidence, huh?
Oh, like molten dog?
Like a dog that had been struck by
Moltened.
something, right? They return to the dock and they report the incident to Dahl's boss, Fred Chrisman.
So is there anything on the boat?
Well, we'll get back to that.
Oh, sorry.
Keep your pants on.
Sorry. They're always
Like
in a
half
hurry.
off. I did tell you to unbuckle them, and you're
Yes,
just more
yes.
comfortable to take them off. I'd like you to put a pin in the name Fred Chrisman,
Okay.
which I referred to so many times as Fred Christmas. Dahl recounts the story to his boss, Fred. And Fred, apparently, according to Fred's own account, said, "That's unbelievable."
Is it now?
But he still decides that he's going to go back to the beach on Maury Island and collect some of this metal material so that they can give it to somebody to analyze. So Fred heads back to the beach to collect some samples. He claims that while he was gathering the metal, another one of the ships appeared overhead and hovered like it was watching him. And then he also claims to have taken a picture of it. So there's very conflicting accounts about the pictures. Was it Dahl who took pictures? Was it Fred who took pictures?
Yeah.
But it does not matter because nobody's ever seen those pictures.
Oh.
Dahl apparently, again, confusion, gave Fred the camera so that he could develop the photos. And according to Fred, they showed this ship. However, he claims that the negatives had spots on them as if they were damaged by radiation. And again, unfortunately, these photos later mysteriously disappeared.
That's crazy. I think the aliens had something to do with it.
Or just wait.
Oh.
According to Dahl's reports to investigators, the next morning after this incident, a man in a black suit visited him and suggested they go to breakfast together. At breakfast, Dahl told the mysterious man all about his experience, and the man in black warned Dahl that bad things would happen to Dahl and his family if he told anyone about the encounter. And that, my friends, is supposedly the first account of the Men in Black.
Ooh.
Right here.
Who knew it was PNW
In
related?
the Pacific. Flying saucers and Men in Black, according to legend, originated right here in Tacoma or Pacific Northwest.
Wow, I had no idea.
But things are going to get even weirder.
Okay, go.
Fred decides to reach out to a man he knew in Chicago, Ray Palmer. Want to know how he knew him?
Yes.
Fred was a big fan of Ray's. Ray had a keen interest in stories like this, as he had been the editor of the Amazing Stories science fiction pulp magazine from 1938 until he began his own publishing house in 1947. Ray had published several stories written to him by a man named Richard Sharp Shaver, which is a real name, not a
Sharp shaver?
He's not selling razors for manscapes.
That's Harry.
Or Harry's. Look, I belong to Dollar Shave Club. Thank you very much. Who claimed to have discovered an ancient language he called Mantog, and as a freak accident due to a welding gun on his job site, became telepathic.
Ooh.
And soon was receiving telepathic record of a torture session conducted by a race of evil robot-like beings who lived deep in the earth called the Daros. They would kidnap surface dwellers and either eat them or torture them. They had ray guns, were telepathic, and liked to torture and rape women. Oh, and sometimes they traveled on spaceships. Shaver claimed that he had been kidnapped by the Darrows and held prisoner for years. So if you look up the Shaver Mysteries, this is a whole series of amazing stories. And what does it have to do with our story? Well, Fred Chrisman wrote into Amazing Stories magazine after reading the Shaver Mysteries, and he claimed to have battled the Darrow himself. So I am going to read real quick the letter that he wrote.
Oh, is it? It's published.
To Amazing Stories. Sirs. I flew
ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Or to make concern. Sirs.
I flew my last combat mission on May 26 when I was shot over Bassine and ditched my ship in Remery Roads off Chiduba Island. I was missing 5 days. I requested rest leave at Kashmir. I and Captain, deleted by request, left Srinagar, good grief, I can't say that, and went to Ruduk and then through the Kespa Pass to the northern foothills of the Kabakaram. Good grief.
Okay, I've developed a theory, and I'll tell you
that I can't pronounce anything.
No.
We already know that to be true.
It's part of the fun. Sorry.
We found what we were looking for. We knew what we were searching for. Okay, but we don't. Good grief. Come on, dude. For heaven's sake, drop the whole thing. You were playing with dynamite. My companion and I fought our way out of a cave with submachine guns. I have 2 9-inch scars on my left arm that came from wounds given me in the cave when I was 50 feet from a moving object of any kind and in perfect silence.
Wow.
The muscles were nearly ripped out. How? I don't know. My friend had a hole the size of a dime in his right bicep. It was seared inside. How? We don't know. But we both believe we know more about the Shaver mystery than any other pair. You can imagine my fright when I picked up my first copy of Amazing Stories and see you splashing words about on the subject. Don't print our names. We are not cowards, but we are not crazy. You have given a lot.
There goes my theory.
Oh, you said you're not crazy. Okay, I guess that theory's gone. You have given a lot of information and amazing stories that seems entirely unrelated to our subject, but a lot of it is. That's what worries us. Okay, so anyway, that's where Fred Chrisman really comes into our story.
That's insane. Like literally, that was my theory, is that there was a group of people in psychotic breaks that found each other and they feed each other. But then Fred kind of feels like maybe he's more about the attention.
Well, okay. So what you just said right there, Fred kind of feels like he's more about the attention. I want you to encapsulate that statement and hold it to be released.
Okay, I'm holding
later.
I'm going to hold it.
Like a champagne burp that is just bubbling in your throat.
Oh gosh, that sounds uncomfortable. I'd rather hold it like a snack I'm going to have in the afternoon. Just kidding.
That's Fred's relationship to Amazing Stories and Ray Palmer, who's the editor of the Amazing Stories. And it's like the Pulp Fiction magazine with like the comic book cover of like strange things that you can imagine from the late 1940s.
Ripley's, believe it or not.
So Dahl and Fred send a sample of this weird metal to Ray, along with a statement about all of these weird experiments.
Like Ray's the guy. That's the expert that I'm going to send it to.
Right.
Like I'm going to have him like figure this out.
Well, I think it was more like Ray likes these stories.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And this is where Kenneth Arnold gets looped back in. You remember him? The guy who saw the flying crescent-shaped things that ended up being flying saucers, according to, stuff? Okay. So, according to stuff, that's how much...
According to stuff I've read.
Ray Palmer had heard about Arnold's flying saucer account and reached out to him. After his own encounter, Arnold became kind of a UFO investigator, as he really did want to find out what the objects were that he had observed. So Palmer offers Arnold like $200 to go visit Dahl and Chrisman to get their account of their experience. So he makes his way to Tacoma. So he lives in Boise, Idaho, and he's got his little tiny little plane, and he like flies over and lands on a private airstrip, and he goes into Tacoma to meet with the men. Now, here's another tale that I didn't find any actual sources for, but lots of people have repeated it in different ways. Arnold claims that when he got to Tacoma, he did not have a hotel reservation. And so he decides to go to the nicest hotel in town, which at that time was the Winthrop Hotel. And when he gets there and he's like, I'd like to have a room for the night, they said, oh, Mr. Arnold, we already have a reservation here in your name. And he did not make it,
Ooh.
which was a mystery. But Ray Palmer did ask him to go out to Tacoma. So my personal theory is that Ray Palmer had a secretary or somebody make a reservation for Kenneth Arnold and just maybe just forgot to tell him because it's 1947.
And then he managed to drop into the right hotel.
Right.
Got
exactly. I think it's just coinky-dink. But people like to think of it as a mystery.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking like that sounds very extraterrestrial.
It's also just hearsay. It's a great part of the story.
There were photos.
Right. So Arnold reaches out to the two military investigators that had interviewed him about his own encounter, and they agree to come out and meet with the Maury Island men. So on July 31st, 1947, Captain Lee Davison and First Lieutenant Frank Brown of the brand new Army Air Force, because it had literally just been created in 1947, they flew up to Tacoma from California. And these two men were not just pilots, they were intelligence specialists. So they meet with Chrisman, Dahl, and Arnold in the Winthrop hotel room and listen to the tale of the strange airships, the molten metal, and the mysterious man in black. They take their report and they head back to McCord Air Force Base with supposedly a cornflakes box filled with the molten metal.
Cornflakes
box.
box.
That is a detail that keeps getting reported. I don't know where it came from. I have to just remind the listeners that a lot of this is speculation, rumor, lore.
And reporting in our current time is shady.
Right.
And it's so much better than in our former time.
Yes. But it makes
so what we get for
right.
information can be very difficult. When we are not talking National Archives or looking straight at documents, you're looking at reporting. It's very...
Yeah. And we do our best to look things like we look on newspapers.com to see if there's anything in the actual newspapers of the area. And we read those articles. But some of these details have been compiled from, other sources that we don't have access to, or we just don't try that hard.
Like Michael Sullivan said, and I'm going to go back to this because this man is a professor, like an expert.
He's a historian.
He's an historian. And he said it's not about getting it right or doing really good research. That's not what we're doing. We're sparking interest and fun in historical facts in the Northwest. So do not hold us accountable for anything other than joy and curiosity.
And I will tell you that Brian Shickley, who later on you will learn is a kind of really, he's devoted a lot of his very young life because he is a baby. Mm-hmm. He's not even 30.
Oh, wow. So he's got a lot to do still.
This story, but he gave me an A+ on my research, so I'm rolling with that.
Yeah, and that's what Michael said when he listened to our stuff. He was like, no.
Chris at Pretty Greedy Tours told me that our research is not half-assed. It is whole-assed. Thank you, Chris. Poor Chris. We bring him up every episode now. I'm going to regret.
Like we're best friends. We hang out all the time.
I don't even have his phone number.
This poor guy.
He does not want to give it to me because I'd be like texting him.
We're like stalkers. We're going to get a restraining order.
Please stop mentioning my company and me in your podcast episodes.
I normally like advertising, but you're
too much.
This is not the kind I meant.
Okay. So we're back to it. The metal was in a cornflakes box, apparently, according to lore. So these two investigators put that cornflakes box in their trunk, the top secret material.
Right now.
No, it's the cereal that keeps you from masturbating, remember? The anti-masturbating. Oh, do you need to not masturbate?
Kidding.
How are you feeling, horny?
I had to say it. It was out there in the open like it was a soft toss. Okay. And I'm a softball player.
So there are some accounts that say that these two investigators had already stated that they believed that the story was a hoax, but I personally find that hard to believe. I think that is just part of the tale that has been created over the years, and you will find out why. They get on a B-25 bomber out of McCord Air Force Base about 2 a.m, and about 20 minutes after takeoff, one of their engines catches fire. Mm-hmm. The two pilots manage to eject, But these 2 investigators, for some reason, were not able to eject. And so they died in the crash. And the evidence was lost. So how could they...
Tragic.
Who did they tell that they thought it was a hoax? I don't know. There's no actual reports of this. This is just hearsay. So
it's lore.
It is lore. Here's the thing. This is interesting that the Air Force had literally just been formed. Like the next day, I think, was supposed to be the celebration day of like Air Force Day. And so these were the first 2 deaths of the brand new Air Force.
Wow. Right out of the gate.
Although Air Force investigators determined that the crash was just an accident when that engine caught fire, there were several reports to local newspapers and to the FBI that people thought they had heard anti-aircraft guns and that the plane had been shot down. After the 2 investigators left the hotel room at the Winthrop in Tacoma, a Tacoma reporter, Kevin Morello, called Kenneth Arnold to tell him that a mysterious caller had reached out to him and just told him everything that had happened in that hotel room. Like recounted all details of the conversation.
Before they went up in the air or like when they're on their way? Okay.
When the investigators were in the hotel room talking to Dahl, Chrisman, and Arnold, that this mysterious caller had recounted the entire conversation to him. So that led them to believe that maybe the room was bugged.
Gotcha.
At this point, because things have gotten more serious with the death of the 2 investigators, the FBI and the Air Force are called in to investigate further. So another Air Force investigator or an FBI investigator, it's very unclear, I've not been able to clear this up, visited Dahl's boat and stated that the damage on the boat did not match the damage described by Dahl and Chrisman.
Right, that's what I was thinking. All that molten
metal would have made a specific
that
damage.
Boat's got some problems.
So they also visited the beach that was described, and they did not find piles of metal. The few pieces of metal...
Did they have a metal detector?
You know, my husband has a metal detector.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, doesn't it? I was like, are you already 70?
Our really, really young baby boomer. You can bleep his name.
So the few pieces of metal that they did find on the beach appeared to be just industrial waste from the Asarco.
Oh, yeah, that's the poison, the
toxin. Asarco, yes. Asarco. It's a terrible name.
Asarco.
It's hard to say. Asarco metal smelter.
Yes.
Which, like we're saying,
did it Asarco?
Asarco. I think it's just Asarco. I was just like, Asarco. I have to break it down phonetically. Asarco. That's what happens in Arco toilets. Which, by the way, did a ton of damage to the area, which we are going to talk about on a future episode with Invisible Histories.
Okay, nice.
So the FBI confronted Chrisman and Dahl about their encounter. And finally, the 2 men agreed to say that it was a hoax and never talk about it again. Because the FBI was like, you guys are causing problems with this story. Like, these 2 guys died.
Right. You've now sucked us into your BS.
Yes. Wasting resources. 2 men died to come investigate this. Cut it the fuck out.
Who likely were loved by someone.
Somebody loved them. Mm-hmm. They had mothers or sisters or wives or children. Like, there's somebody. So you think the story's over?
Of course not.
That's right. It's still
we have a lot of havoc we can still create.
It's still getting weirder. So let's dive into it.
All right. Here we go.
After the break.
All right.
Hey, do you want a lunch break hang? A good break-sized conversation with some intelligent, interesting friends that make you feel right at home? Then you need to listen to Midday Musings podcast, hosted by my new pod friends, Laura and Steven. Think of them as your 2 work besties. Take a listen.
In a world buzzing with notifications, welcome to Midday Musings, the cure to internet overwhelm. The Fallout Wasteland very closely resembles the Wild West, with a few extra notes.
Right? It's like a post-apocalyptic Wild West, but with a ton of steampunk elements.
Dive into discussions on media that matters, history that fascinates, and relationships that resonate.
Drive. I love that. I also believe that's my defining characteristic.
Stephen, it is why I fell in love with you.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm having feelings, but not the bad kind. Join us, two best friends who've navigated life side by side for nearly a decade. I just wanted to talk about robots and aliens. I just wanted to do it. That's all.
This is all a ruse.
It was. Your cozy corner, where conversations are just the right size for your lunch break.
So hit pause on the chaos, subscribe to Midday Musings, and join our family. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find their show wherever you listen, but we will also link to it in the show notes. So at this point, Dahl and Chrisman are claiming that they made the whole incident up for publicity.
Duh.
Then, on July 8th, 1947...
Wait, we're just like a little... That's like months. We're talking months, right?
No, because this happened in late June. June 21st to July 8th.
Oh, so like not even months, just
Right.
month.
Not even a month.
Wow.
Just a couple weeks. On July 8th, 1947, W.W. Brazel, known by Mac around town, reported to the Roswell sheriff that in late June he had discovered some unusual debris on his ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. The debris included tinfoil, rubber strips, and sticks. The sheriff contacted the Roswell Army Airfield, who came out to collect the debris. After collecting the wreckage, the Army issued a bonkers press release that stated that a flying disc had been retrieved from a local ranch. Although the military immediately corrected the story, announcing that it was actually the remains of an experimental weather balloon equipped with a radar device, the press picked up the original statement and had a field day with it, with headlines reading, RAAR captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region.
RAAR. RAR.
Roswell Army Air something. This is the most famous and well-known UFO incident that everybody knows about. I mean, have you been living under a rock if you have not heard
That's
of
what the
Roswell?
movies were made out of.
Right.
No, so this weekend, my little nerdy grandson, and I say that in the most loving way. I love how
We love
nerdy-
nerds.
Anyway, he loves science and all this nonsense. He's only 8.
Nonsense. Did you just call science nonsense?
No, I didn't. I didn't mean it that way. Anyway, he was like, so Grandma, have you ever heard of Roswell? And I was like, Roswell. And tell me about it. And then he was started talking about the UFOs. And I'm like, because he'd been reading about it,
Roswell.
right? So he's like, Roswell.
Oh, cute. So between Roswell, Kenneth Arnold's flying saucers, and the Maury Island incident, the nation is in the grip of a full-blown UFO panic. And also on the same page, Monroe Woman Wins Chicken of Tomorrow contest for 1947.
Okay, yes, we need to keep those coming.
Yeah, we're going to keep the also on the same page. When we look at newspapers.com, we've agreed that we're going to start pulling back to pull out the best of what is on that page, whether it's an advertisement or an article, because they're fun.
Right. For those that don't know, that haven't been on newspaper.com, when you search something, it gives you like a zoomed in right onto that word. You zoom out, you read the article. But if you zoom out further, you can see the entire page.
That's how I discovered that article about Jimmy Carter's hemorrhoids, which is maybe the best thing I've ever found on newspapers.com.
Oh, God.
Okay, so the story is still not over.
Keep on going.
It's getting weirder.
How?
So Chris over at Pretty Gritty Tours did a great job investigating this story and added some really weird twists to the story. He looked into Harold Dahl some more and couldn't find very much information about him outside of the Maury Island incident. There's very little mention of him anywhere, and I also did my own looking. Dahl later claims that his son disappeared, but there's no mentions of it in the paper. Apparently, the son was later found waiting tables in Montana at a diner with no memory of how he got there.
Oh,
I searched for
dropped by a UFO, maybe.
Sure. I mean, this is, again, an uncorroborated story. I did do a lot of searching on newspapers.com. I looked and looked and looked, and mostly it was Mrs. Harold Dahl enters something into a baking contest.
She was quite the baker.
Mostly what I found. I don't know if it was even that Harold Dahl, but I did find a lot about a Harold E. Dahl. Now, our Maury Island Dahl is Harold A. Dahl.
It's a vowel. It's a vowel.
Harold E. Dahl was a pilot for the Air Corps in the 1930s. And he was basically like fired from the Air Corps for gambling.
Oh.
Whatever their firing process is. Like you can't fly, decommissioned or whatever. And so then he became a commercial pilot. But again, because of gambling, he ended up having to escape to Mexico. And then he flew as a mercenary pilot for Spain under the name of Hernando Diaz Evans. He was shot down and captured. He was sentenced to death. He was eventually freed. He moved to Switzerland, and then he was expelled from Switzerland for smuggling gold with his mistress.
Oh, my.
So we need to do a bonus episode
right?
on this guy.
Like, he sounds like just winging it.
Yeah.
I'll just do whatever.
I know. I'm like, we need to do an episode on that guy, like a bonus episode for the Patreon.
Yeah.
On Harold E. Dahl. Because,
I agree.
Man. Okay, so I digress. There's really not a lot about Harold A. Dahl or our Harold Dahl to go on. No reports of his son missing or his dog getting killed or even newspaper accounts of the famous Maury Island incident. There's not much.
Does Sparky even exist? Did he really die? Was he even a dog? He doesn't. You can't find anything on him.
No.
He may have not. He may have made up altogether.
Other than Dahl and Chrisman saying so. So, it's hearsay. According to my buddy Brian, you are my buddy after that 2.5 hour conversation we had yesterday. We're friends now.
Should I be jealous?
No.
I'm just kidding. Don't be so serious.
We're going to have him on and he will talk about everything and anything with you as well. He's very entertaining. We had a great time. It was fun.
Excellent.
Okay. So Dahl bought a junk shop in Tenino. Or do we say Tenino? Tenino, which is a popular place for weirdos in the Pacific Northwest.
True.
And we're going to do some episodes about it because...
That's actually, we got to get down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, Jay-Z, Ramtha.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things down there. Mm-hmm. I rode my bike through there on the STP.
If you live in Tenino and you're listening to this podcast, you're cool. But there are some weirdos there, and you must just recognize that and admit it and just embrace it. It's fine. So apparently... Not only did he sell antiques out of his junk shop, he also sold weapons. And that is according to his son. So Brian has interviewed his son.
Oh, okay.
And he confirmed that, yes.
So this is Brian's own experience.
Yeah, he's interviewed Dahl's son. So the story kind of fades into the past as a famous hoax. But one player in the story keeps on keeping on. Do you remember Fred Chrisman?
Yes.
Dahl's boss? He was the one who suggested that they report the incident. He's the one who had the photos developed. He's the one who collected the metal fragments. He's the one who contacted Ray Palmer of Amazing Stories. And he's also one of the ones who claims that the B-25 bomber that had those 2 investigators was shot down. He also claimed that all of the evidence that he had, like the photos about the Maury Island incident, were stolen from his desk by the Men in Black. And this guy's story is by far the most bonkers part of this entire tale, which we will dive into in the next episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
So sorry, guys, but this story is just getting too big, too meaty.
To be continued.
And if I give you any more, you're going to bust. ... So I guess you're just going to have to come back next week to hear all about Fred Chrisman. The most interesting man in the world, according to Fred Chrisman. So thank you so much to Brian Shickley for his help on the story. We are going to have him on the show soon, so you can hear more about his projects. But for now, you're going to have some homework. We're going to link this in the show notes, but you're going to go to fredchrisman.com. That's FredChrisman.com. And there you can watch Brian's short animated film titled Fred Chrisman, Cave of the Space Nazis.
Oh, what?
Yep, and this is going to give you a great primer for next week, so you'll be prepped. And that's not all. Do not Google this guy, okay? Just save it for next week. You can find the link in the show notes, like I said, or on our website, rainydayrabitholes.com. Make sure to check out the website and social media for some great links and photos about the episode. And also on June 21st and 22nd is the Men in Black birthday bash in Des Moines, Washington. So
When?
on the
Say it again.
June 21st and
Oh, nice.
22nd.
Okay.
So June 21st is going to be a film festival, UFO film festival, and a dance party, which we are going to be at, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. And then on the 22nd is the kind of like party, and it's at the Quarter Deck in Des Moines Marina, which I have been to so many times. I love it down there.
I don't think I've been there.
It is a wine bar in a converted storage container in the marina. I love it. They always have great beer. They always have jumbo juice from Airways Brewing, which is an amazing IPA. You would love it. But on the 21st is when a little short film from our friend Brian Shickley is going to be played. Was supposed to be the previewing of the second episode of the Fred Chrisman animated series, but he says it's going to be a little bit something else now. But there'll be other UFO films. It's going to be a blast. We're going to be there. We're going to drag our husbands along.
Yep.
I will put a link to it. Let's just do that instead of having you go look for it. I will put a link to it on our Facebook page, on our website, in our show notes. And so go. And if you see us,
Yep. We're going to be wearing T-shirts.
you'll see our Ask Me About My Podcast shirt. The theme is you have to either dress like a Men in Black or just wear black and white party clothes. So luckily our shirts are black and white. So anyway, so you can go to that, and
We'll be wearing black blazers. Just kidding.
I'm going to go to Goodwill and see if I can get a black blazer.
Yeah.
All right. So also, we'd really appreciate it if you would share the show with a friend. Just text it to one friend, like right now. And that's the best thing you can do to support us.
Brag about it. Tell
Brag about
everyone you can. Tell our stories that you heard about this.
Be like, oh my gosh, you have
in
to listen to this
conversations.
podcast. It's amazing.
At the bar, at work.
Be really annoying about it. Don't shut up about it.
Oh my God,
People
did you
remember.
hear what I heard? This story, it's hilarious.
Yeah, you're talking about your thing of your life, but I really want to tell you about this podcast. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We will see you next week when you can hear about Fred Chrisman. So you got to come back. All right.
See you there.
All right, here we go. See you down the rabbit hole.
I am meeting with a man who is by no stretch of the imagination shy about his claims.
My name is Fred Chrisman. I'm a real person.
Eros must reign supreme.
I'm in the business of collecting and archiving amazing stories.
I think he's dead. Oh my God!
Do you know what minerals the cave was composed of?
20% limestone and 80% space Nazi monsters! There is no I in team, but there is always a man in Chrisman.